There is one weapon greater than any other in battle. Do you know what that is?
Will. An unflinching will to survive no matter what.
Exactly. The will to carry out your mission and return home alive will see you through even the most desperate of situations.
With the release of Metal Gear Solid 3, players were put into the shoes of series legend Big Boss and introduced to as Menta, the Boss, and her unit from World War II, the Cobras. A game that focuses on the boss and the Cobras has been a highly requested spin-off for Metal Gear fans ever since the release of Snake Eater. No sign of such a title yet, so to celebrate 20 years of Metal Gear Solid 3, as well as hype for the Delta remake that was announced days before I was finally able to start this challenge, I decided to go for a challenge run that could best emulate the missions that made the boss known in the Soviet Union as Voyevoda.
Voyevoda?
That's what they call the boss behind the Iron Curtain. It means warrior or mighty soldier in Russian. When used to refer to a woman, it means something close to Lady Knight.
The idea for this started as just another S-rank every mission challenge, but then I kept adding to it, to try and create a challenge befitting a character of such legendary status as the boss, until finally arriving at the following. Rule 1. Achieve an S-rank, plus complete all possible mission tasks in a single attempt. There are a few missions where that's physically impossible, either due to the mission script logic or because of required equipment, so don't worry about those. But any missions where extracting a target is an option over eliminating them, the optional extraction will overrule elimination, which is every instance. Rule 2. No retries from checkpoints. Any restarts have to be done from the very beginning of the mission. Given how long these missions can last as a result of Rule 1, I didn't hold on to any footage of failed runs. I don't have anywhere near the amount of storage space in my possession to hold all that. Rule 3. No Reflex Mode. Rule 4. All display options turned off. This means no marking, no enemy suspicion, no damage direction, and no objective markers. And Rule 5, I can only deploy with weapons, equipment and buddies fitting the boss and the Cobras. On-site procurement of weapons and vehicles is fully permitted. If you want to try a Cobra unit run like this, take it from me. Do not adhere to all these rules at once. I would have turned off auto-aim too, but it wasn't on my mind when I was making the rules, which is unfortunate because it would have made shooting easier in most situations. Rereading my initial notes, I was more concerned about camera shake being on for some reason. Now, to expand on Rule 5. The boss herself will be an A++ staff member. Part of the rules would be that she has no staff abilities, although Pouncing Harrier does have gunman ability to extend Reflex Mode, which isn't of any use with Reflex Mode being turned off. She'll be wearing the white DLC sneaking suit, and her personal range of weapons is as follows. A custom AM MRS-4R as the Patriot. There's two different grades I'm using. Grade 11 for missions that feature heavy combat, and a grade 5 version for missions that don't feature heavy combat but to save on Tarragon and the deployment costs. Side note, if you want to recreate the Patriot in Metal Gear Solid 5, use the Renov Sharpshooter stock, not the RGL 220. The Renov stock is the same stock on the original Patriot, just with an extra adjustable part, which makes sense given it can't be fired single-handed in Phantom Pain. A custom Grade 5 AMD 114 LB45, the most powerful 45 caliber pistol in the game, though not quite the perfect pistol to combine with CQC and stealth missions. Not yet anyway. A custom Grade 4 Wu S pistol with Grade 2 suppressor as the Mark 22 Hush Puppy. Grade 1 magazines, Grade 5 smoke grenades, and Grade 5 hand grenades. In reference to the Cobra's sabotage operations, she can also use Grade 5 C4, Grade 5 D mines, and Grade 6 ATB mines, as well as bombardment fire support, though that last one does limit your mission rank to A or lower, but if you've seen the Outer Heaven video, you'll probably know where I'm going to use this. And last but not least,
recoilless nuclear warheads.
Okay, I'm stretching this one, but the blast radius from a custom Grade 7 FB MR-RL Mark II launcher is so massive and goes beyond its visual effect, it may as well be a mini nuke launcher. For items, the only thing the boss brings are Grade 3 Phantom cigars. Moving on to the Cobras, there's two ways they can feature in this challenge. As a buddy, or weapons relevant to their choice of combat can be used by the boss. The Pain as a buddy is played by D-Walker, armed with homing missiles as grenades carried by Hornets, a skull machete to act as his Hornet swarm getting inside enemy vehicles, and SMGs to act as his Tommy gun, which he can provide cover fire with thanks to being fitted with an intercept head. As for what the boss can use, Grade 7 E-stun decoys to replicate his body double trick, and a custom Grade 7 UN-AA-MF machine gun as his Tommy gun. Quiet takes on the role of both the Fear and the End. For the Fear, she'll be armed with the Grade 4 Wicked Butterfly, and the boss's version of a crossbow is a custom Grade 8 AM MRS-73. For the End, she'll use a Grade 3 Guilty Butterfly, And to recreate the Mosin for the boss to use, I intentionally didn't use Renovs, which are Phantom Pain's stand-in for the Mosin Nagant. Instead, I used a custom Grade A M2000 NL. You might wonder why. Two reasons. One, customizing the Grade A M2000 can make it look more like the End's custom Mosin Nagant than the Grade 5 Renov could ever hope for. And two, its trank rounds are almost double the strength of the Grade 5 Renov. It's what I'd expect from the rounds used by Metal Gear's most legendary sniper. Finally, we have the Fury. Going back to D-Walker, this time fitted with a flamethrower, skull machete, ignore the fact that he has secondary weapons, and a scout head. The scout head is to recreate what recon ability the Fury would be able to provide by flying high above the battlefield with his jetpack, and unfortunately the boss isn't able to use anything as cool as a flamethrower, just grade 5 petrol bombs. By the way, if you want all 6 members of the Cobra Unit and want the Sorrow to be involved, you can lower the difficulty of Rule 4 and turn on Marker Display and Enemy Presence Display. That's the end of the briefing, now on to the mission. Episode 1, Phantom Limbs. The mission begins immediately by taking a slight detour uphill to grab some hidden rough diamonds, then moving on to Devillo Calais to find intel on Kaz's location. Bearing west to widely dodge Outpost 23, I made my way into the Soviets' main building by snaking my way around the rear of the building with plenty of gaps in the enemy patrol, being very careful to open the upstairs room without slamming open the door, which would have been heard by guards downstairs and made them come running. The next task requires extracting a transport truck driver in Violo village who's on his way to Guande, but not before he makes a stop at Waxin Barracks, where I also need to extract that outpost's commander. So I could save myself some trouble by stowing away in the back of the truck, but it's a long ride there with serious trouble with goats in the road. When the truck driver arrives at Waxind, he stops for a smoke break, which I didn't hesitate to take advantage of, holding him up and capturing him, then immediately take cover in the event someone I wasn't aware of saw the extraction. The game's background music wasn't dying down, and sure enough I heard the shuffle of footsteps nearby. A guard at this end of the barracks would be a problem when it came for me leaving for Guande, so after he started heading back to his post, I told him to lay down. After some rock climbing to reach a vantage point looking over the barracks to do recon and marking everyone I could see, it was at this point I realised what I was getting myself into with the HUD turned off, questioning my own sanity and loving the thrill of it at the same time. The commander was moving between huts and ventured into one on his own for some sleep. I didn't want to risk getting seen trying to enter the hut through the door, or drawing attention by the sound of smashing through a window, so I waited around the back of the building for him to wake up, which bought time and allowed the sun to fully set. Once he was awake, I drew him over to investigate the sound of me cracking my knuckles, but problems arose as he approached. I had not just one, but 2 guards, and a decoy that was doing its job in full of me, looking directly in my direction. Holding my nerve and letting the nearest guard turn and face away, this meant only the furthest away guard noticed something was going on. And unfortunately he was sharp enough to shoot down the first floating balloon. But a quick shift of the commander's unconscious body was a success, and I didn't want to hang around for any longer. Although I did develop a comfort for sprinting when I was absolutely certain there was no guards nearby who would see me. Finally reaching Guande, I circled around the village to mark as many enemies as possible, then continued to approach from the south. I could hear guards having a conversation, and I wasn't confident about moving in to rescue Kaz knowing there were guards that I didn't have control of nearby. So holding up the guard inside the building and a crack of the knuckles to draw anyone nearby in, I caught one, then drew in another walking past the rear of the building, but I could still hear footsteps nearby, and a check of the map showed someone was moving around the centre of the building. I took a chance and prepped for an ambush by this door, not a moment too soon. With these 4 guards out of commission, this left the path clear to liberate Kaz and head for Pequod, which 23 minutes into this mission left me with one final task.
It's them.
Boss, watch out. It's the skulls. Don't let them find us.
There is only one way through these guys without being discovered. Sitting still for almost 3 minutes to let the 2 on your right get halfway across the bridge, leaving you free to take the eastern path and just charge for Pequod. These big main story missions lasting half an hour is actually going to be the norm for this run. Smaller missions such as the following luckily fall closer to the 10 to 15 minute range. Episode 3, A Hero's Way. Many of these missions I start from free roam on foot. Not for any tactical reason, there are many I start from the chopper, but it's more to keep with the idea that this is deep behind enemy lines, with the boss having survived for days in the wilderness before coming across this airdrop of supplies and intel. From this southern starting point, I'm able to immediately grab a plant south of Deshago Calais. Unlike the Outer Heaven challenge, which allowed for tactics to make the Soviets suspect the locals, one of the mission tasks this time was to neutralise the commander from a distance of 100 meters or more. neutralize, not eliminate, which meant this can be achieved by way of tranquilizing him, and I'm still able to extract him. Not that it would be much use, given by the time I close the distance he would be woken by a comrade, but orders are orders. Racing to a vantage point to recon as many enemies as I can before the inbound soldiers arrive for their meeting, looking back at this footage I was amazed how quick I was to pull the trigger. I swear it felt like I waited over 10 seconds between aligning the shot and firing. Landing a bullseye headshot is all well and good, but I'd have to put as much distance between me and where the Soviets would be looking for a sniper as fast as I could under the cover of darkness. This is when the risk-reward element became clear. There is a huge risk in not having obvious markers and X-ray vision to know where all the enemies are at all times. Only being able to see them when pulling up the map and using that to decide when to make each individual push is far more rewarding. It almost went wrong with this armoured Soviet noticing me and annoyingly taking the long way around to come and investigate. But I saw the potential in making use of him and drawing out the commander from inside the building. Setting him up in this corner in the hope of not being seen by any guards on the west side of the village, my first attempt at luring the commander out with the knocking noise didn't go as planned, which is when I got the best intel I could get.
Caution, sandstorm approaching.
If I was going to extract this guy, it was now or never. This time I used a smaller enclosed area to hide in and let him pass by to get the jump on him and his subordinate from behind, just as the sandstorm was arriving to conceal anything I was up to. Fulton in him during a sandstorm would be unwise as it risked having him killed in the process. But with the map showing no enemies in the direction I needed to go, I just simply went for it, heading over for where the materials were, then taking the commander on horseback to the nearest LZ, then exfiltrating the hot zone.
Mission complete, and how? They're gonna tell stories about this one, boss.
Episode 4, C2W. The mission is to destroy 3 radio antennas at the Eastern Communications Post. But first, there's 2 prisoners to rescue at Devilo Calais. I wasn't playing these missions in order, so the Soviets now had claymores lining the perimeter. Unlike rescuing Kaz, who couldn't be Fultoned out and required a clean escape route, these prisoners could be Fultoned, but were being kept under watch. The first only had 1 guard who could be neutralised no problem. I did make sure to Fulton the prisoner as close to the perimeter as possible to avoid anyone noticing and causing upset. The second was being watched by 2 guards having a conversation, but they left as soon as they'd finished talking, leaving me free to walk in, take the prisoner back to where I entered the village from and Fulton him out just as a sandstorm kicked up. With them rescued, I could now head for the comms outpost, although I did genuinely have trouble navigating under the sandstorm. It was time for the main objective of this mission. Approach would be from a western path that leads to a cliff overlooking the outpost, as there's some rough diamonds to collect up there. Exfiltration would be Fulton and myself out with a materials container that was also a mission task. There's 2 ways of fulfilling this mission: either destroy all 3 antennas, or simply destroy the radio equipment they all lead to. Well, for the sake of absolute efficiency, why not all 4? Most of the guard activity in this place is at the main entrances on the road, and gathered in the very centre of the outpost. I was worried about how many eyes were gathered under the central tarp. Luckily there's plenty of cover on the south side of the base that allowed me to take out the only 2 guards in my way with a magazine distraction and CQC to move on to the final antenna without incident. The only guard to notice me was one quite some distance away by the south checkpoint, but rolling into the darkened grass left him utterly clueless. There was no waiting around as I got near this container, setting off the C4 so all enemies' attention would be drawn away from the container, letting me climb on top and fly away without anyone noticing.
Mission complete, and how? They're gonna tell stories about this one, boss.
Episode 5, Over the Fence. The boss's mission this time is to extract a Soviet scientist attempting to defect to the West. There's nothing wrong with an evolution of one's beliefs, but you wouldn't catch this American patriot defecting to the Soviet Union. Having reconned Waxing Barracks exterior and neutralising any force from the west side's checkpoint, my first priority is to capture a 4-wheel drive patrolling between outposts. I was under the misbelief that I also had to extract the driver as well as the vehicle, though we can chalk this up as an act of the boss's legendary valour. The driver parked in a triangular formation of guards. By timing it right, I was able to neutralise him when they all had their backs turned to me, until this one turned around, and it was only by the miracle of him being too distracted in tunnel vision by his unconscious ally that he couldn't notice me. I carried on to take out the 2 remaining Soviets so that no one would notice the jeep being extracted. Unfortunately, the first guard I took out in the formation was spotted by another one coming out of the barracks, putting the base on alert, but I was already making a tactical retreat to approach the barracks from the cliffs, as there was an escaped prisoner up in the rocks to extract. However, I managed to draw attention to myself, and didn't realise until 2 guards in pursuit were right on top of me after extracting the prisoner. Thankfully, they were more distracted by the extraction itself, so the best thing was to sit tight and let them leave before making my next move. There's a blueprint being kept in the small buildings on the east side of the barracks, and to get there I'd have to pass the power supply for the base's lights. An explosion would serve as a great diversion as well as providing cover by killing the lights, but to top that off, the Afghan weather was on my side. Having planted some C4, there were 3 guards all heading in the direction of the hut containing the blueprints. I had to decide quick, and spooking them while they were as far away from where I needed to go seemed the best option. My gut feeling was proven right with the positions they took, combined with the sandstorm arriving at the same time, providing the perfect cover to CQC 2 of them, grab the blueprints, then make my way over to the Soviet prisoner. The map isn't the greatest help inside a multi-story building, but I didn't need to simply get the prisoner out. I had to extract him via a hole in the basement roof, then get myself out, all with 3 guards running around I didn't have a beat on. The longer I waited to move, the trickier this would get. So grabbing the prisoner and making my way over to the hole, I just managed to fall short of bumping into a Soviet soldier running around in the basement. However, the 2 guards running upstairs noticed the extraction, then for some reason became suspect of where I was hiding, but each of them detecting me didn't stop me from yanking their ankles and knocking them out. With 2 of the 3 guards knocked out and my position compromised, this exfiltration became a blitz out. I knew where my ride out of here was and I was leaving. If the remaining guard decided to become a problem, I had 7 .45 caliber solutions to deal with him and anyone else. To the Soviets' benefit, I was able to exfiltrate without the need for bloodshed.
Mission complete, and how? They're gonna tell stories about this one, boss.
Episode 6. Where do the bees sleep? This was the skill check. I may not have recorded these missions in order, but I wasn't doing anything past this one until it was done. If you haven't destroyed the AA radar at Desmasy Liman, your only insertion point is miles away that has you past numerous enemy outposts, which thanks to the mission tasks I have to go there anyway. These tasks would require bringing along the Enz Moslin Nagant and the Pain as a buddy. It's also the first mission I brought along the grade 11 version of the Patriot due to that battle with the skulls at the end of the mission, but it would be decisive in saving this mission from a disaster elsewhere. The only insertion is via chopper, and traversing off-road we made it to the first major obstacle of this mission. This is a headache of a location. The place is crawling with guards, very little cover, and there's 2 mission tasks based here. Extract 2 snipers in the area, and extract the Hamid prisoner who can't speak. The immediate problem is the mission script. This prisoner will be taken ahead to Desmasy Liman, where the Soviets will locate the honeybee then have him killed. But if I break the mission script by neutralising his interrogators, that would stop him being taken away and buy me time to move in to extract him. Having opened fire on the 2 snipers I needed to extract, this caused serious upset with nearby guards coming to investigate the sound of gunfire. But their pathfinding sent them in completely the wrong direction, leaving the road to the first sniper completely unguarded. Setting up some C4 for a distraction and 1 more shot to deal with a guard taking cover, this brought the investigating guards back up the hill and further back from where I came from, leaving me completely free to extract the first sniper. I made quite a serious mistake here. I'm not used to this bridge. If I'm doing this mission the long way, I normally just go straight down into the gorge, then climb out the southeast side and keep heading straight for the Desmasy Liman. I didn't want to risk climbing up the middle of the cliff only to find myself pincered, and previous attempts to cross via the scaffolding proved unforgiving to prevent a combat alert. What I wasn't familiar with was the fact that you can indeed traverse the natural geography on the north side of the bridge to get to the other side. Had I known that, I would have picked that route without question, rather than completely expose myself crossing the main section of the bridge. I almost got across to the other side with it completely unguarded, but I could hear someone rushing back. I set off the C4, but it didn't do anything to catch his attention. Unfortunately, I caught the attention of a soldier in full riot gear. I had 4 seconds between realising what my situation was to make a decision and act on it. That was milliseconds from setting off a combat alert. The no kill bonus and everything past it was gone, but it's still possible to achieve an S rank without it. All you need is 130,000 points, although I was mistakenly of the belief at the time that every kill would deduct points from your final score. But with him dead, I considered myself weapons free to start eliminating guards that were an immediate problem. I knew there were still guards nearby on the scaffolding that could jump out without warning, so I held off on rescuing the prisoner as I moved for better cover to get my bearings. And rightly so, as exactly what I predicted played out. Once again, the Afghan weather was on my side, so there'd be no better opportunity to get the prisoner out than now, as well as get the jump on any guards blinded by the storm and remove them from the equation. Unfortunately, the storm didn't last anywhere near as close to what I was hoping, only being able to deal with a single guard who just so happened to be seen by the second sniper I had to extract just as the weather was clearing. I was already moving for cover, which was my only option, from where I could throw out a smoke grenade to blind him and his buddy for a second time, close the distance for CQC, and complete this snatch mission. Fast forwarding from that hell to just outside Dismassi Le Mans, the next task was to eliminate an enemy gunship that patrols the area. The Ends Moz and Nagant was key for the relay base. It was time for the Payne's grenade carrying Hornets to do their job, firing curve shots from around cover when it wasn't looking to swat down this boss and fly. 18 minutes into this mission and I finally arrive at the fort. The most comfortable route for me was to circle in from the west, narrowly managing to deceive a guard out of cover to clear the way in. The interior of the fort has long sight lines and numerous teams inside searching for the honeybee. Opening fire on one of the guards would complicate matters and just make the others scatter, or even inadvertently make them push on my position. Smoke grenades and CQC had been the tactic to grab the sniper earlier, and 3 grenades in here was perfect for taking out the 4 soldiers, although checking my corners distracted me from one final guard had been taking cover out in the open. He was a problem that was introduced to 7 solutions. I may have secured the honeybee at the 25-minute mark, but I was not going to let my guard down in these final few seconds heading out to face the mist unit. Due to one of the final mission tasks, using the honeybee is not an option, and picking it up makes me drop the Moz and Nagant. Running to my left to get some cover in play, it was all up to the Patriot at this point, which even for an assault rifle made very short work of the skulls. With them eliminated and the honeybee's ammunition intact, this mission was complete. I passed the skill check. The challenge was now on.
Mission complete. Great work.
Episode 7, Red Brass. Starting this mission in free roam from the most northern starting point was a tactical decision. 3 Soviet commandos are holding a meeting at Violo village. The mission objectives are to listen to the end of their conversation, extract all 3 of them, and the escort soldiers they arrive with, as well as rescue 2 prisoners being held north at Guandé. But there's a problem. If I extract the commandos while they're all at Violo village, the hot zone will be too small to let me reach Guandé. Entering Guandé was no problem, taking the same route I do to rescue Kaz, but a swift exit would require the base being under my control. Bringing the Mark 22 to take out any guards that could witness the first prisoner being extracted was a huge time saver. Although the second did get seen, it served as a perfect distraction to let me leave the village right under their noses, and I was starting to get brave with sprinting despite knowing there were enemies nearby. This sandstorm was perfect as it arrived just as I reached Violo village. There's 5 guards of interest outside the building where the meeting takes place. The first is on his own, more towards the eastern edge of the village, and the other 4 stand guard outside the building as the meeting goes on. I arrived to hear the conversation start, which goes on for 2 minutes and 53 seconds. Not that I knew that during the run, all I was focused on was tranquilizing the guards under the cover of the sandstorm, moving them away from the building, then holding them up to keep them under control. Although I did something quite reckless that was 5 seconds short of ruining this mission script. I tranquilized a guard that was waiting by the jeeps, that I should have known would obviously been seen by someone, triggering a radio to HQ, resulting in an alert which would break the mission script and cut the conversation short. I may not be fluent in Russian to track how the conversation was going without subtitles, but my numerous attempts at this mission, and Metal Gear Rising, taught me that Spasibo Tovarish Kapitan, followed by Хорошо, means it's about to end.
Спасибо, товарищ капитан. Я отдам приказ установить мины, как только вернусь на базу.
Я тоже отдам такой приказ. Хорошо. На сегодня это все, товарищи. Как можно скорее займитесь минами заграждения. Враг не дремлет. Будьте начеку.
As soon as it did, I threw in smoke grenades to stagger and blind them for CQC to make their extraction, as well as the 4 guards from earlier. I had no way of being certain which guards were the ones the commanders arrived with, so I simply tranquilized everyone in the outpost and fultoned them all. It's an excessive number of POWs I've created, but all that mattered was the mission.
Amazing. Mission complete. That right there is why you're the best, boss. The one and only.
Episode 8, Occupation Forces. For once, this is a mission that doesn't require much more than anything you do in a regular run of it. The only extra task is rescuing a single prisoner from Sakrae village, and he's being held in a building that's barely off my normal route anyway, even easier since the main part of this mission has to be manually triggered. Despite the long sightlines and verticality of Sakrae, the guards were spaced out enough that made taking them out with CQC, or simply making an offensive push, little cause for concern. With the intel file received and the path out clear, I laid a quiet and lengthy trap to extract the 3 vehicles vehicles and the Colonel. Enemy vehicles will stop for animals, but I moved further ahead to lay down a single C4 just in case. I then headed back further down the route to get as much distance out of the convoy as possible. After the tail end of the convoy passed, I immediately fired off a single pistol shot to make it stop and attach a floating balloon before it had a chance to investigate where the shot came from. As I began to sprint ahead, the horse gave the lead tank more trouble than those goats in episode 1 gave that truck driver. Instead of simply running off to the side of the road, he instead ran further up the road, causing the convoy to stop and start numerous times, giving me plenty of time to catch up on foot and extract both the truck and the tank.
Amazing. Mission complete. That right there is why you're the best, boss. The one and only.
Episode 9. Back up, back down. It's even more ridiculous of a run around this time. Deploying at the most southern landing zone is the only option for an all tasks run, as this drops you right next to a search party you're tasked to extract. If you left them alone, your next opportunity to come and get them would result in them having already found and killing the prisoner they're hunting, which voids the task of extracting 6 prisoners. I may have extracted the search party, but the prisoner can wait as I have to do some serious chasing to catch up with target 1. I'm already at Yaku Obu outpost, and riding on horseback has the benefit of letting you hang off the side for both speed and cover to make my way around the base and take out one of the targets waiting inside. This triggers the prisoner transport vehicle to spawn, which being this far north makes that the next priority. But I knew the trouble the prisoner transport could cause. Just because I yoinked him doesn't mean the Soviets are getting away without incident. The timing was perfect as the next target vehicle was approaching, which is the one I decided to extract for one of the mission tasks. There's still 5 prisoners hidden throughout this mission to rescue, but there was no use in trying to go get them just yet. Waiting at the bottleneck for just over a minute to destroy the next target resulted in the weapons truck spawning in, and as soon as I filled in that, I had target 5 to deal with. With just 2 targets left, I took up a position on the cliffs above Yaku Obu outpost for some long-range shots when they came into view. With Soviet reinforcements now inbound, I was down to just 2 rockets for taking out the chopper. The tanks weren't an issue since I had to extract all 3 of them, but I had to make these shots count for the gunship, which would be best achieved if it was hovering steady. For mid-1980s Soviet technology, they had to have some serious no-nonsense technology on board to detect being hit by a mere 45 round while in flight. I might have needed 2 shots to get its attention, but I bullseyed it with the Davy Crockett. All I had left in this area was one of the 3 tanks on patrol, and this guy was out for revenge against the horse for his antics last mission. What maniac drives a tank into a horse? Slipping past Yaku Obu outpost and not wanting to risk the horse's health more than it had already been literally impacted, I opted to repeat the same attention grabbing technique to make the tank stop for an easy floating. This is when the mission switched from vehicle destruction to prisoner rescue. There was 1 prisoner in Waxen Barracks, which by this point was familiar territory. Up the cliff, secure a path out, correctly wait and see if a guard was about to enter the basement from the opposite end, grab the prisoner, get her out, but I've still things left to do. I can't fly away on the cargo container this time. The next 2 prisoners were out in the wilderness completely unguarded, the latter being due to having already dealt with the search party of the mission, which made rescuing him no trouble at all. The final tank for extraction does laps of the southern third of the mission area, making it very easy to sneak up behind for extraction. It even drives past the penultimate prisoner who's wandered into the desert. That just left me with a single prisoner to free from the Marhate Palace. I foolishly didn't have faith that all the enemies in the area who had their back facing the cell was a perfect opportunity to slip in quietly, then carry the prisoner away. I didn't even opt for a smoke grenade this time, and I was so close to getting out undetected. The prisoner had the floating balloon attached, when all of a sudden a guard came right out of nowhere behind me, which apart from the gunship, meant this was the only other combat alert in a 32-minute endurance.
Mission complete, boss.
If anyone can explain what triggers this undue other rank restricting factors label, yet still permits the S rank, I open the floor to you. Episode 10, Angel with Broken Wings. This was a fast-paced prisoner rescue of not just the primary objective Malak, but 5 other POWs as well. Malak is due to be transported with an APC escort from the Marhate Palace to Yaku Obu outpost. 3 of the other 5 prisoners are scheduled to be executed as soon as he's taken away, which is not long after the mission starts. This was a covert assault on the palace, relying on speed, deception and distraction to get in, extract 2 prisoners, then out without getting caught. The guards were all located on the most northern section of the palace, so entering from the south and proceeding up 1 story was met with no resistance. As I moved to approach the first prisoner, I made sure to throw a magazine at the upper half of the wall before carrying him just outside his holding room to floating him out unobstructed. The sound of the magazine, as well as the extraction, would serve to draw the guards from the next floor up, away from the next prisoner, who also also needed to be moved slightly in order to get him out. Being on the top floor was the perfect place to set up a C4 distraction, not for getting out at the palace, but to draw all the guards' attention to that single room while I made a move on the very same holding cell that just spoiled things at the end of Backup Back Down. But to make up for that, I had a clean escape in broad daylight, and now it was time to catch up to Malak. There's a scripted event in this mission where the escort is held up by some goats in the middle of the road. You may think this would be a perfect chance to extract the APC for another mission task, but a better opportunity would come later under tenser circumstances. Malak's captors stopped just outside the supply post for a conversation before setting off again, which in that brief window between them driving and the armoured vehicle being able to take off, was the opportunity to take it. Intel gathering in the field can prove vital to future operations, and one of the objectives in this mission is to listen to the last conversation Malak and the transport truck driver have. Undeterred by the defiant nerve of the Soviets on my approach, along with the good news of an inbound sandstorm providing the perfect cover for an extremely exposed base, Malak is not in good health to withstand a Fulton extraction, so it would be wiser to extract the other two prisoners first, taking the 10% chance they'd be killed being Fulton during a sandstorm, like a madman upon reflection. There's a ventilation duct that runs underneath the main courtyard of the base, which was perfect to duck into as the sandstorm died down. For now. It's only upon looking back at this footage that sandstorms seem to remind me that smoke grenades are the power item that they are, and this is where overusing them got me into trouble. Getting hold of Malak was easy since no one was guarding him, and this should have been a simple case of throwing down some smoke and heading back out through the rear gate that I came in, but with the Soviets waiting outside, I wanted to be sure they were staggered and choking, which in my haste to leave put Boss and Malak in an even worse position.
And in the hole.
I didn't have anything specific in mind for bringing the Fia's crossbow along for this mission, but this was its shining moment throughout the whole run. The only way I can get Malak out of the hole was to throw him out, and I didn't want to risk the one Soviet soldier I had seen raising an alert over this. But now I'd lost visual on him. Blindly firing the pistol wasn't going to get the job done, and the sound of letting loose with the Patriot would only make things worse. But the crossbow, being silent and as powerful as it was the perfect choice. All I had to do was keep firing into the smoke until the shouting was abruptly stopped. There was only one more guard struggling to catch his breath that stood between us and heading north around the bend to make it to the LZ for the extraction.
Mission complete, boss.
Episode 11, Cloaked in Silence. There's two optional tasks beyond defeating Quiet. First is taking her out without lethal attacks. Second is taking her out with non-firearm attacks. Once again, sniper rifles are off limits for the Quiet boss battle, and it's another duel of signature weapons, in the boss's case, CQC, in the form of taking 2 penalty kicks to Quiet from her blind spot. Episode 12, Hellbound. Despite how big the mission area is, all the mission tasks are based at the Soviet base camp, meaning my only concern for Surak power plant was getting out as quickly as possible without the aid of cardboard boxes. Upon reaching the camp, the first 2 walker gears I'm tasked with extraction can be found heading towards the main entrance to go on guard. Both of them being there would be a problem due to the number of eyes already in that area, but with a more forceful approach I could ambush one of them as they were heading for the gate, then go beyond the basics of CQC to silently take out the on-foot infantry, with the second walker gear pilot none the wiser of the human pinball game going on behind them. The third and final walker gear to extract was patrolling outside Emmerich's lab, but I had 2 other objectives to fulfill on the way there. First was to secure a blueprint being held in the main storage hangar that isn't Emmerich's lab. I may have been bold to sprint into the camp to snare the walker gears, but I wasn't going to try that beyond this point. Not because of the enemy chopper that does patrols of the base, but there's 2 snipers that overlook major sections of the camp and can be on their A game if they know something suspicious is going on. The second objective is nothing major, simply procuring a little something along the route you'd likely take if you arrived at the base camp by fast travelling. A soldier should be able to take care of business without relying on that sort of thing. Before making contact with Emmerich, I set out to extract the last walker gear by making use of unconscious friendlies to draw his attention. But this took a little while to set up between waiting for him to move away, get the drop on the 2 guards waiting outside Emmerich's lab, then wait for him to come back. But patience is a virtue. Huey has to be extracted without taking any damage, which on the way out was already easy enough given how many guards I've been holding up or knocking out, though I still wanted to be sure and took one of the snipers out of the equation. When it comes to evading Sahelanthropus, it would never suspect me running in a circle around the corner and back into the base. Once things calmed down, Sahelanthropus just ran away and started hanging around the landing zone, but as soon as its back was turned I gunned it, tapped into some telepathic abilities to get Emmerich off the horse and into the chopper, just as Sahelanthropus suspected something was up. It was a close shave, but with this exfiltration, we were finished with Afghanistan and onto Africa.
Amazing. Mission complete. That right there is why you're the best, boss. The one and only.
Episode 13, Pitch Dark. The only entry to Angola Zaire is through a scripted chopper ride just south of Massa Village, and there's two things that need to be done on the way to Mifunda oil field. Contract Forces of Africa have been training child soldiers during daylight hours. Insertion at night time while they're gathered in their quarters was easier than had I tried this during daylight while they were training. After making it through Bwala Yamasa, an environmental NGO is looking for a lappet-faced vulture, one of which can be found circling a burned-down village to the north. This thing is normally a nightmare that loves to waste my time and circle in the air, but for once it made my life easy and came to rest on the ground for an easy shot right away, leaving me plenty of tranquilizer ammo left over to take on the oil field. Shutting down the oil field itself is the primary objective, so tackling this was nothing beyond what was already expected of me. The real puzzle was how to handle 2 extra objectives once I blow the tank. Doing that triggers the CFA to tighten security and seal off the oil field with walker gears that were out on patrol. I need to exfiltrate before they seal it off, but I also need to extract those 4 walker gears that are also heading for the oil field from 2 different directions. I thought I would be able to use smoke grenades to set up a distraction and delay the arrival of the team heading for the east exit, but distant gunfire and yelping suggests the enemy were having trouble with hostile wildlife, which put them on edge, ruining my attempt at a rushed ambush. The result was a combat alert that I was on the back foot for most of the time, although it was a blessing in disguise, in that it drew the other 2 walker gears heading for the south entrance of the oil field back to come and take me on. This prevented them from ever being able to seal it off, but it did mean I had to deal with incoming missile fire smoking me out of what little cover I had. But my will to succeed watered down any sense of defeat from this minor compromise. CQC isn't a viable strategy against charging mechs, but bobbing and weaving to get around to the pilot's exposed side was all I needed before fleeing into the African savannah for mission complete.
Mission complete. Great work.
This was quite encouraging at this point in the challenge. If a mission could end so chaotically and still yield the success I was looking for, maybe I could start tackling missions with a little more of a relaxed mindset. Less of a pressure to pull off a perfect performance. This is the worst mission in the entire challenge. And it's all because of one single task and how easy it is not to fail, but lose the ability to achieve. The situation is 4 prisoners are scheduled for interrogation across Kaziba camp, with aid from an interpreter. You're expected to follow the interrogator around until you find a prisoner known as the Viscount. If a single guard notices something suspicious and calls headquarters, causing the camp to go on alert, the mission script will break, resulting in all the interrogations being called off. Listening to all 4 interrogations is the one overarching optional objective you have to complete for this mission. I had no reason to believe this was impossible. This was a test of will. Deploying from free roam southwest of the camp, I immediately hear sound of a jeep inbound carrying one of the optional prisoners I have to rescue. His escort checks in with the interrogator-interpreter, who are just setting off to see the first prisoner being held at the north end of the camp. You'd think I'd simply follow them from a distance, but they're going on foot, so it'll actually take a while before they hold the first of 3 interrogations. This is time I had to dedicate running ahead to where the prisoner that was just brought in, as well as another one, would be interrogated. The Fury was tasked with marking as many enemies as possible, while I moved in to thin out some numbers for later, hiding one guard in a toilet and carrying the other one away from the camp and hiding him behind some rocks where no one would see him. Heading back to catch up to the interrogation duo, I keep up this guard thinning activity, taking out one that was hanging around some material containers and bringing him along to the first interrogation to hide him afterwards. There's a task to extract one of these containers, but even if I did it without anyone noticing the extraction itself, someone would notice eventually that they'd been stolen and set off an alert, breaking the script. Their retrieval comes last. This is an isolated section of the camp, and the only guard who will populate this area is the one guarding the first prisoner. If I'd been less thorough this early, he'd be the one taking a rest in a nearby dumpster rather than the one I brought along, but he's the only guard in this area, so it was safe to leave him where he was under the circumstances I'd created. Circling back to where I did some prep work with the guys I dealt with earlier in the mission, this area overlooks a prison camp where the second interrogation takes place. This is the most volatile part of the mission that can break the script. These 2 prisoners will be executed shortly after the interrogator and the interpreter leave. But even with the setup earlier, that still leaves 4 guards in the area that would all have to be neutralised in quick succession. First, to save the prisoners' lives. Second, before any one of them noticed what was going on and called in HQ. Then, before I could phone the prisoners, I would have to hide these guys somewhere I could put them fast and be confident they wouldn't be seen. Then, when the coast was clear, I would be able to phone out the prisoners. In the shack next to the prison area, there's an intel file that reveals the location of all prisoners I'd rescued by now, as well as the Viscount. I could have left the guard that was sleeping in that shack alone, but moving him to the same hiding spot saved this mission, as it made me aware of a guard who was about to spot the other 4 that I'd placed there earlier just as I was leaving, then one who spotted him, and another who spotted him. After countless attempts at this mission and making it this far, I was not about to have such nuisances ruin it now, so I filtered them all out of the picture, which brought another guard running over. Good news for him is he didn't miss out on a flight to the Seychelles. The interrogation team still had a bit to go before reaching their final interrogation spot with the Viscount. Word of warning, do not go near this building until the interrogation has started. Wait up here, wait until you hear a conversation, then move in to get close. There is nothing more heart-wrenching than making it this far into this mission task, only to wait outside this window and watch the Viscount drop to the floor because the POW AI will drop their script if they get close to you, so you're able to pick them up. As I was seconds away from having listened to all 4 interrogations, I chose to torture myself and check what every guard still active was doing, with one deciding to walk right up to the spot where the previous guard almost spotted the guards I put in the hole. I barely had time to cool down as I watched his icon turn to blue to signify that he'd gone to sleep, and the interrogation concluding. Seriously, it was about 2 seconds between him going to sleep and me hearing the green light that was the sound of footsteps. Finally, I could go loud. This mission had been going for 22.5 minutes at this point, and I wanted it to be done with, but I still had a materials container to grab. And annoyingly, I couldn't just fly out on the first container I saw. The mission task requires that you extract a very specific container, which in my experience is varied. So I had to grab all 4 and ensure that I had the most beautiful image on my iDroid before exfiltrating the hot zone by land.
Amazing. Mission complete. That right there is why you're the best, boss. The one and only.
Please listen to me. If you like the sound of this challenge and want to try it yourself, episode 14 is the one reason why I advise against doing all the stipulations at the same time. If you've made it this far into the video and would like to see more challenge runs like this from myself, I struggle to imagine coming up with another self-imposed challenge run like this that is so demanding. But if you could press the like button and possibly consider subscribing, you will send the message to me loud and clear. There's still more to Metal Gear, and there's plenty of other franchises to have a crack at. Episode 15, Footprints of Phantoms. The mission is to extract 4 walker gear stored at Ditadi Abandoned Village. Unlike Kaziba Camp, which required snaking through an extremely open, flat environment, Ditadi is a hill that can be approached from any angle and very easy to slip away from unnoticed. First things first, Digitalis lutea is one of the more rarer plants to come across, and highly sought after. One of them just so happens to grow behind a rock that overshadows the village. Circling back around from the south brings you out to the highest point at Ditadi, which is where all 4 walker gears are being kept, as well as the first of 2 prisoners to rescue. Due to this being the highest point with plenty of cover from rocks, there's very little risk of being caught from guards anywhere other from on this altitude. I was being unusually cautious given how easy this environment is to move around in. By the time I was ready to start extracting, a guard had moved up and stumbled across one of the guards I held up earlier. I rushed over to knock him out before he raised an alert, and of course sprinting would make him turn around to detect me. That's no trouble for CQC, but Quiet/the End took the opportunity to fire off a shot to take him out on my behalf, which the unsilenced shot put the whole village on alert. I did plant a C4 earlier to draw the guards away from the second prisoner, so the plan was to set the whole village on alert anyway. The next step was to slowly circle around the edge of the village until the opportunity to go straight for the prisoner, then back out with little exposure presented itself. The final task was to steal a getaway vehicle, a truck parked on the road just southwest of that prisoner, a short distance that no one would be looking at if the village was under fire from a sniper. There was a method to the madness of driving away in the truck, only to get out then floating it away. I wanted to verify the truck extraction objective was complete, rather than just to exit the hot zone while behind the wheel, while also covering the distance needed to get there in less time than on foot.
Mission complete, and how? They're gonna tell stories about this one, boss.
Episode 16, Traitors Caravan. There's a truck planned to be escorted through the area that needs captured. The Moz and the gang got serious use in this mission. First to take out an outpost where I could find an intel file detailing the convoy's route, followed by taking out a transport of zero-risk security soldiers on their way to link up with the convoy. Their services could be better utilised elsewhere. This mission does involve listening to a number of conversations, but mercifully, all I have to worry about is tailing the convoy from a comfortable distance. No stress of having to prevent executions under countless eyes, nothing that could break a mission script. just sitting back to ID the transport truck I had to steal and its escort, then remaining effortlessly hidden while listening to the free conversations the truck driver has throughout the mission. First at the airport, Outpost 12, and finally Kaziba Camp. Once they began to move on from Kaziba and headed for Mafinda oil field, I was able to head them off by cutting across the savannah and set up a roadblock, only for the real escort team to show themselves. Making use of the Skull's annoying trait of always heading for wherever you are even if you're not detected, I laid a trap of numerous C4s to detonate when they got close enough. And this is where I learned the armoured skulls do not get alerted when you kill not just one, but two of them with a detonation. Although they did when I reactively started shooting as soon as I hit the detonator. The remaining two may have each tried a teleporting machete attack, but they were up against the mother of special forces, the woman who created CQC. With the skulls eliminated, all that was left was to clean up the transport truck and its driver to complete the mission.
Mission complete, and how? They're gonna tell stories about this one, boss.
Episode 17. Rescue the Intel Agents. 2 Intel staff have been captured and being held in the worst place on Earth. Not Camp Omega, Kaziba Camp. Reinforcements for a search team are heading out to find our first man who's escaped into the jungle. I could do without them also on the hunt for him, easily taken out of the picture with a simple roadblock to float in the first 3 in their transport, and the last one bullseyed with the Mosin. The sound of a nearby truck provided the opportunity to further disrupt the CFA supply lines by extracting its driver. Entering the area our escaped Intel member was last tracked, I was not going to be shy about this rescue operation, trampling the first guard with a horse, and sniping 2 out of the 3 remaining hunter force, leaving just 1 too distant to do anything about rescuing our first man. Thanks to his intel, he was able to provide the exact location of our second man. So I set myself up top again at Kaziba Camp, but that's when I got serious intel over the radio while trying to draw the enemy away from where our second man was being kept.
Boss, we've picked up some movement. The squad is on its way to Kaziba Camp. We've ID'd them as some CFA heavyweights. These aren't your everyday reinforcements. Whatever's about to happen, you need to get the target out now.
These sounded like high-value operatives, well worth an impromptu snatch mission. With the area cleared, I lay in wait for them to approach. There were more soldiers heading over than just the 2 anticipated, which called for excessive use of smoke grenades to create a huge curtain to obscure their extraction and slipping away with our second intel teammate. We couldn't leave yet, as I still had one last job to do. There was 1 extra prisoner being held at the end of the camp where the Viscount had been interrogated earlier. Keeping our intel agent out of the way and waiting for things to calm down before heading back in, this prisoner must have been regarded as of lesser importance than the intel teammates, given there was only 1 guard covering him. One who could easily be disarmed and made to lie down. With this extra prisoner rescued, it was back to where I left the second intel teammate hiding and out of the hot zone.
Mission complete, and how? They're gonna tell stories about this one, boss.
Episode 18. Blood Runs Deep. Most missions until now clocked in at anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes. This was the longest one of the whole run, clocking in at almost 45 minutes. That's 3/4 of an hour this mission lasts. Starting in free roam just outside Bampevi Plantation, this was a quick insertion over the fence and sneaking around the back of the buildings to find our first target. I came across the former rebel soldier I was looking for to extract pretty quickly, silently grabbing him so his buddy didn't notice and dragging him back into the shadows to be extracted and quickly getting back out of the plantation. There's a gunship that needs to be eliminated as well as 3 armoured vehicles for extracting that patrol the mission area. The first one was heading to do a U-turn inside the plantation, which meant I could set up an ambush for it before heading off much further. Heading away from the plantation and onto the savannah, I could hear the engine of the second tank. It may have been heading for an outpost, but that just provided the perfect opportunity to head it off for the same type of ambush. There's reports of a 5-man sniper squad in the mission area. The first 2 are nested at opposite ends of a huge marsh and covering each other's positions. All I've got for cover here is grass and moving very slowly. The only path I've got to outflank this guy is directly through his line of sight. And with no HUD elements, all I've got to let me know he suspects me is a very faint laser sight letting me know when to keep still and just pray, even if it means having to wait in this unflattering position. There's only 2 in this area, the other 3 are elsewhere and will be dealt with when the time comes. With the timing of the previous 2 armoured vehicles, standard operating procedure would suggest that the 3rd was nearby. My timing was a little off as it was coming from the opposite direction I was expecting. Not that it made any difference. A horse is a horse, of course. I wasn't preparing a defensive blockade, just something to make them stop and sideswipe them. Before moving into Kungenga Mine to rescue the kids, I had a chance to take out the gunship as it was on approach to my location at the end of the river that leads to the mine upstream. I felt brave, but I missed the first shot, triggering a combat alert. The second one hit, and the result was slightly horrifying as I looked up to see this flaming wreck flying in my direction. That combat alert was just far away enough from any nearby enemies that they didn't have a visual on me, and the only way that enemies in the nearby river could search for my last known position was taking the long way further down the river and around a hill, leaving their posts completely abandoned, allowing me to just jump in behind them and carry on. The journey upstream was almost completely abandoned save for these two very easy to distract guards just outside the mine. Getting out was a different story. I was not about to risk trying to escort the kids to the LZ under these stipulations. Not when I had the child capable Fulton extraction at my disposal. All I had left to do was extract the 3 remaining snipers posted northeast of the mine, and I didn't want to risk any more combat alerts trying to sneak through the mine itself. What followed was an 8-minute stealth mission down the river with the mission scripted enemy AI in pursuit to keep the pressure up on the players so they're always moving forward. I made it this far, and I wanted that no kill bonus. I started this mission just after 700 hours. By the time I got away from the river and free to traverse the much more open roads, keeping away from hostiles as I made my way to the snipers, I'd been on this mission for so long that it naturally progressed to nighttime. No need for a phantom cigar. I was not at all familiar with this area, and I was approaching it from the direction that the 3 snipers were looking in. Another case of moving exceptionally slowly until I made my way around, not just to their flank, but snaking my way around to the sniper at the top of the mountain, so if there was any chance that he would see me trying to Fulton extract his buddies first, that was out of the picture. Holding them all up first, then Fulton extracting all 3 of them to complete the mission. It may have been the longest mission under some tense circumstances, yet the length of this is preferable to the execution that Lingua Franca demanded.
Mission complete, and how? They're gonna tell stories about this one, boss.
Episode 19. On the Trail. The next bunch of missions are a lot more relaxed. Lots of tailing, waiting, and much easier to handle adversary. A PF commander known as the Major is hiding somewhere in the field, and one of his subordinates is on his way there to have a meeting. The Major's hiding spot is fixed, so I know where to go and have no need to follow the subordinate. I do, however, have good reason to take the lead on the route he takes, as there's a prisoner needing rescued at an outpost along the route, before heading on and setting up where the Major's hiding. I would use a phantom cigar to speed up the arrival of the subordinate, but I don't trust it to not overshoot the conversation I have to listen to. But this time didn't go to waste. I used it to throw out a few of the Payne's body double hornets to frighten the soldiers and have as many as possible stun themselves once the conversation had wrapped up, finishing up the stragglers with use of smoke grenades to close the distance. I've been keeping track of the Major, but I will not lie, I lost sight of the subordinate and wasn't able to find him until he regained consciousness and stood up.
Mission complete, and how? They're gonna tell stories about this one, boss.
Episode 20. Voices. The leader of the children from Kungenga Mine is being held prisoner in an industrial zone past Minokoya Nyoka Station. A supply delivery is on its way there that stops at the first guard post on that route for directions from an intel file, but I already beat him to it and reported that info back to command. The supply truck driver has 3 conversations throughout this mission. One of the mission tasks is listening to the very last one he has right as he reaches the tunnel that leads to the industrial zone. Just like Lingua Franca, the mission script has to play out flawlessly for this to occur. Still, all I have to do is follow him, which provides another chance to make things easy for myself and stow away on the truck that he takes, bailing out and taking to the cliffs for cover just before he has to go the rest of the way on foot. Like I said, these missions are a lot easier following Blood Runs Deep. As he makes his way down to the valley, that's when the mist begins to pick up. There's African wild dogs in here I'm expected to extract one of, so I task the Fury to recon the area and mark out any enemies he can spot. After capturing a wild dog, I wasn't sure if I'd be able to crawl along the river and not get spotted by some of the soldiers doing some target practice. But things were a lot less hands-on as the foliage grew dense and visibility grew poor. After the conversation finishes, the driver's left alone with his back to the front door of the Devil's House, while I'm inviting myself in and the Master sicks his attack dog on me.
tell stories about this one, boss.
Episode 21, The War Economy. An arms dealer is heading to Nova Braga Airport to meet with an official from the Contract Forces of Africa for a guided tour of the airport. Some idea of a world where soldiers always have a place being corrupted, so wars are artificially engineered for the sake of profit. That's no world the boss wants to see. The CFA have the airport guarded with snipers on the roof, who are rightly checking the entry points for any signs of movement. I had to venture into the area just slightly to get the Fury to recon the area, then pull back to circle around from the north, neutralising a walker gear on my way in that could have been trouble later on. The arms dealer's chopper comes into land and he moves into the main building to meet with the CFA official. It's another mission where I have to listen to all conversations the character has, but African architecture isn't all it's cracked up to be. The roof is so thin I can hear the first conversation they have while putting all the snipers up there in a storage room for safekeeping. The gunship's carrying a blueprint I'm tasked to collect, which means I'll need to take it out. I realised bringing a nuke launcher was unnecessary when I could just plant C4 on the helipad for when it would land again once the tour was over. Keeping in close pursuit of the arms dealer and the CFA official, the tour involves inspecting the hangars at both ends of the airport, and they make use of a truck to save time walking. I'm sure you can imagine how easy this makes things for me. Once I'm in this truck, I don't need to do anything for the next 6 minutes. There's an objective to steal the material containers in the southern hangar, but it requires the floating wormhole. Technology beyond the CIA and the SAS's R&D. Sorry guys, this is one mission task that's impossible for this challenge. Looping back to the main building to end the inspection, the final 4 objectives are executed in quick succession. Once the final conversation finished, I CQC both men, then trank them for good measure. I moved them both outside to Fulton them one after the other, followed immediately with me detonating the C4s to take out the chopper that had landed for the pickup. Meaning all I had to do was venture upstairs, grab the blueprints, then make a swift exit.
Pursuit. Mission complete. Amazing. Mission complete. That right there is why you're the best, boss. The one and only.
Episode 23, The White Mamba. I hate to lessen the depth at which I'm covering these missions, but all I did here was sneak around Boala Yamasa and its north outpost, neutralising and extracting all 20 child soldiers in the mission area without raising an alert, all while grabbing the diamonds, extracting the prisoner, and then when it was all said and done, set up to trank Eli in a single sniper shot. If the Mosin was carrying lethal rounds, a lot of problems would have been prevented today.
Excellent, boss. The target White Mamba has been neutralized. Amazing. Mission complete. That right there is why you're the best, boss. The one and only.
Episode 24, Close Contact. The boss is entering this hot zone in an area full of martial eagles that Animal NGO is looking to conserve. There's also a shipment of 4 material containers northeast of that position at Outpost 60 not being kept under watchful guard. Although the controls were letting me down here, screwing me around climbing on top of containers and almost getting me caught as I began my escape. Heading over to Outpost 20 where the engineers are being held, there's an enemy squad on their way to the guard post. Knowing this could get a lot more chaotic if the male engineer manages to escape as he's scripted to, I push hard on the tent to get them out of there under heavy guard. But that's not all. I also had to do damage to their transportation capability by stealing 2 of their jeeps under these clouds of coughs and concussions. This was less than halfway through the mission's final runtime. What followed was a change in careers from CIA agent to goat wrangler. 6 of these things grazing next to the outpost. It's a nice open area, plenty of room to move around so no risk of getting detected. But it still takes me about 6 minutes to find them all in the dark, only for the last one to run out of the hot zone where I can't Fulton them. I could extend the hot zone by intentionally triggering a combat alert, but I wasn't about to cater to a goat. Cassette tapes weren't allowed, but thinking about it now, maybe they could have been. Nothing to say the boss isn't trained in emulating animal calls. It would explain where Ocelot got it from. There's an African peach south of Monoko Yanaoka station that needed picked. So I went to go get that, hoping this last Nubian goat would wander back into the mission area. Mercifully, he cooperated.
Amazing. Mission complete. That right there is why you're the best, boss. The one and only.
Episode 25, Aim True, Ye Vengeful. There's 12 child soldiers and 2 prisoners all needing extracted. Upon insertion, there's 4 child soldiers and 1 prisoner in the outpost. The other 8 are only just re-entering the village from having been out on a mission, which meant if I neutralised all hostiles within the village quickly, I could let the end go weapons free and put the rest of the child soldiers to sleep, while I prepped the commander and the general's number 2 in a nearby jeep to extract them at the same time. With all hostiles extracted and their commander under my control, I was free to look for a Digitalis Parpea. The greater purpose of picking all these flowers is of no matter.
Why'd you disappear on me all of a sudden?
I was on a top secret mission.
What have you been doing?
I've been collecting resources.
You've been fucking picking flowers!
Taking this long is a risky move, as there's an escaped prisoner heading southwest who also needs extracted, and he could find himself subject to the rules of nature on this mission. If you ever wonder why you randomly get a prisoner death notification on this mission, that's him being eaten alive by the wildlife. With the 2 prisoners and the child soldier's commander packed up, it was time to go.
Amazing. Mission complete. That right there is why you're the best, boss. The one and only.
Episode 26. Hunting Down. The mission is to find a human trafficker moving through the savannah before he gets to Kaziba camp. But 4 of his victims are being held at Ditadi village, meaning I can't be cautious in liberating them, as well as finding out what I can about the route he'll be taking. My opening move was to send in the end to scout out Ditadi village, and he was able to locate at least 3 of the prisoners and mark them on the map. I repeated my strategy from Footprints of Phantoms on how to handle Ditadi, entering the village from the top and working my way down under cover fire from the end. Up top is where I found the first prisoner, then the intel file. The controls let me down once again at trying to hide an unconscious soldier in the perfect location, swiftly followed by rescuing the second prisoner from inside this ruined building. The end's cover fire was of greater effect this time around, letting me move within the centre of the village itself with little threat remaining, rather than moving out and circle around the perimeter before moving back in. Despite not being marked on the map, the final prisoner was held in the next tent over from where the third had been held, and the enemy was in total disarray trying to pinpoint the end, who I kept moving from point to point. With the victims out safe, it was time for myself and the end to bug out and start hunting down the trafficker, as well as his escort along the marked route. We found the tail end Charlie, that I made the end take aim and stand by for a synchronised takedown of, while I took aim at the point man. I probably should have neutralised the trafficker himself first. The moment his group suspect anything, he'll start running towards Kaziba camp. But this pseudo-pincer movement left his retreat and advance cut off. His only hope was to outsnipe the father of sniping and the mother of special forces. It was a clean sweep, with the final escort being a perfect 2-on-1. The end took his helmet off, which opened him up for me to land the headshot. The primary objective was complete, but there was still one last thing to do. Find and extract a side-striped jackal near Kaziba camp. This meant having to cover a lot more ground trying to find one than those Nubian goats, but at least there was no risk of them running out of the hot zone.
Amazing. Mission complete. That right there is why you're the best, boss. The one and only.
Episode 27. Root Cause. A mission less than 5 minutes long in this challenge run is the rare exception, mainly due to the only 2 optional mission tasks being directly related to the primary objective, one of which has a time limit. Moving fast and circling in from the north side, I set up on a cliff to neutralise the escaping prisoner as he approached the truck. For his own sake, once he was out, I put down any nearby enemies, moved in and extracted our man on horseback.
Amazing. Mission complete. That right there is why you're the best, boss. The one and only.
Episode 28. Code Talker. While these last few missions were reasonable to complete in under 20 minutes, it was time for one to last over half an hour. You see this rock? It's a magic rock. I like this rock. It's a rock that was clearly designed with this encounter in mind. You can crouch behind this one single rock, and it's the perfect size cover for crouch walking behind, and when you pull out your weapon to aim, even though you're obviously poking your head over the top of it, the skulls for some reason can't see you. Normally, I would just sneak past the skulls and let them remain active for the second half of the mission.
Let me guess. There's a problem.
One of the mission tasks involves extracting an armoured vehicle sealing off Lingua Valley, which only happens if the skulls aren't present after I locate Code Talker, which means I have to take them all out now and extract them rather than leave it for later. The extreme version of this mission is what stopped me attempting to also include all the extreme and total stealth missions in this challenge run. Even with what help the Fury's search mode was able to provide, I had to operate on memory from practice runs with the HUD turned on to know what branches and trees to aim for in order to account for bullet drop. You remember what I said in the Outer Heaven challenge run about the skulls making a push if you were overly aggressive? Well, this moment I can't explain. This one detected me, shot a tranq round, then teleported over for a machete attack, yet this didn't move the fight into the combat phase. This was followed up with them firing a lethal shot that didn't result in reflex mode and again didn't move into the combat phase. They tried a machete attack again shortly after, but when it comes to CQC, I've got the upper hand. There is one annoying oversight in this fight. If you hang around the magic rock, you'll be too far away for the game to notify you if you've neutralised a skull. But once you've got 3 out of 4 eliminated, this fight, with no HUD elements in this environment, is what Quiet's boss fight should have been. and it's probably 1/100th of how Kojima would envision his ultimate interpretation of what the end's boss fight would be if he had the technology. Once all the skulls are neutralised, a countdown will begin before they get back up from their resting places and flee the area. So I preemptively extracted the first 3 before taking out the 4th one to optimise the amount of time I'd have to extract her after a 13-minute 4v1. The combat phase of that sniper fight doesn't count as a combat alert, but aside from keeping the skulls off my back during the fight, avoiding it also keeps the mansion on normal alert status when moving in to make contact with Code Talker, which is easy enough given the rear door puts you right at the stairwell leading to the cellar where he's kept, but I've got to get him out without him taking damage. I almost considered putting him somewhere for safekeeping, but the Payne's body double hornets were all I needed to get away from the mansion and into the jungle. I didn't bring the Mark 22 to avoid cheesing this section due to how much I'd been using it in recent missions. This was a test of patience and bravery, moving from cover to cover only when the opportunity presented itself. Getting Code Talker on the chopper meant that short of the chopper being shot down and failing the mission almost 30 minutes in, he was safe from taking damage. All I had to do now was double back and go get that armoured vehicle, and with only 1 infantryman in the vicinity, this meant the body double hornets could feast, leaving no witnesses to save the tank being extracted by the single soldier sprinting back to the LZ.
Amazing. Mission complete. That right there is why you're the best, boss. The one and only.
I may have struggled with the sniper skulls on extreme. Still, Episode 29, Metallic Archaea. With the sniper skulls extracted, the armoured skulls want revenge for their failure to protect the cargo in Traitors' Caravan. Even taking advantage of their armour parasites, they never stood a chance against a grade 11 Patriot and CQC. All they achieved was getting themselves captured, having put too much faith in their cannon fodder to pin the boss down.
Mission complete, and how? They're gonna tell stories about this one, boss.
Episode 30, Skullface. It's time to invade the Soviet philosopher's lab OKB-0, and there's a lot of assets I need to extract, with nowhere near enough time to do it comfortably. 4 walker gears, 1 in every major area of the base, 3 tanks, 1 in each of the internal areas, and 7 red material containers, 4 in the middle and 3 at the rear. The first walker gear is patrolling outside the main entrance to the facility, which is easy enough to sneak around to their back and get the place under control. Since the walker gear itself is the only enemy that's moving around, that's the only thing to worry about evading. Moving into the first main area, there's a tank and another walker gear on patrol to capture. The left hand side has numerous infantry patrols, whereas the right hand side only has a single sniper to worry about. Flank and neutralise. That opened up a lot of breathing space to extract the first tank. The walker gear patrols the main road running through the centre of the facility, which would be risky to get up behind it on that path without getting caught. But drawing it over to the side with a magazine bought me the time it would take to return to its normal patrol route to close the gap and make the pilot stop. I didn't have a good feeling about extracting it on the spot going unnoticed, but a lone walker gear won't draw suspicion, which meant I could move the pilot somewhere out of sight, but as for the walker gear itself, well, I could just wait until no one was looking and move it myself to somewhere I would be certain no one would hear or see it being extracted. All objectives in the first area were complete, on to the second. The first 4 of 7 red containers can be found on the immediate right after going through the main gate, but the end result does leave me pretty exposed with no cover under the range of a searchlight and a gunship on patrol. The only protection was this foliage to hide under from the gunship. With the enemy now on alert noticing their cargo was missing, that resulted in all the enemies in the area heading south to where I'd just come from. This left me pretty isolated to cut out their eye in the sky with a Davy Crockett unnoticed, forcing the infantry to cover, leaving me free to grab the second tank, throw up a wall of smoke to move across the courtyard, then grab the third walker gear, taking a crawl space into the final area before the missile silo. This is a tight area with fewer guards, but with the chopper out of the picture, my strategy was to get everyone knocked out with trank darts or hornets, grab everything, then run upstairs. The sleep darts didn't last as long as I was hoping, but knowing I would only have to keep on top of 1 guard waking up at a time was nothing after everything I'd been through by now. With how long this takes, every bonus and tactical takedown is crucial in getting the score just barely over the 130,000 for the S rank. As I ran upstairs, there was only one thing on my mind to save myself having to do a perfect stealth no kills run again. Get the tape, 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 and of course skipping the jeep ride. Though under these circumstances it becomes the most ridiculous moment in the entire saga of interpreting the boss's will.
The Major thought this was his friend's will, but I think he never understood what she wanted. He cannot understand her will. I do.
Listen, wise ass.
Boss, stop Sahelanthropus. mission complete. That right there is why you're the best, boss. The one and only.
Episode 32, To Know Too Much. Final stretch now, the 5 regular ranked missions of Chapter 2, with the first being one that's impossible to get all tasks in. First things first, I need to get the CIA agent under my control, but not extract him, otherwise the hot zone will shrink and prevent me being able to perform the rest of the mission objectives. If I'd foregone neutralising one of the 4 search team soldiers before moving on the CIA agent, I probably could have moved them to safety without the use of smoke grenades to cloak my evasion. Because I've saved the CIA agent from being located, this means I can't extract the XOF agent who enters the mission area later to assassinate him, since he only does so if the CIA agent is discovered then escorted to Lamar Hate Palace. But I can still extract the driver of the transport vehicle, since the mission starts with him in his jeep just waiting for the CIA agent to be discovered, which gives him his orders to drive out there. I may as well grab him since I have to come here anyway to rescue one of the 2 prisoners. And I finally learned my lesson with this holding cell, throwing down smokes to Fulton the prisoner, then CQC Fulton the driver, and slip away without triggering an alert. All that leaves is heading to Deshago Calais and rescue the final prisoner, sneaking in right under their noses, and to save drawing attention to myself with the Fulton, I go for the heroics of waiting for the searchlight to shift its attention, then charge.
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us. That's it. You've made it out of the hot zone. No sign of the enemy. Amazing. Mission complete. That right there is why you're the best, boss. The one and only.
Episode 35, Cursed Legacy. There's 2 containers hidden in the jungle that are billed as being under a time limit to extract. But thankfully, this is a time limit that doesn't start until you extract the first container. This offers plenty of time to be harassed by some side-striped jackals while trying to retrieve a diamond stolen by some ravens. There's a commander of zero-risk security who needs to be extracted that's patrolling the upstairs of the mansion. And it's a shame this place doesn't get much replay value in the game. I know so little about the mansion other than how to get in and out to rescue Code Talker as easy as possible. But the trouble I was having here did result in the commander falling into my lap. There's also an intel file in the mansion required to pinpoint all the guards' locations in the jungle. The final objective that could have been trouble was to get both containers out without the enemy noticing they were gone. Combined with the fact that the time limit on this mission doesn't start until you extract one of the 2 containers, all I had to do was neutralise the guards at both containers first. This trimmed the window of exposure down to just 40 seconds sprinting between the 2 containers.
Target extraction confirmed. Mission complete, and how? They're gonna tell stories about this one, boss.
Episode 38, Extraordinary. For as small as this mission is, it was a puzzle in figuring out which order to tackle the mission tasks. It's all due to a prisoner that's outside the hot zone once you complete the primary objective, which itself is under a time limit. First was to stop the reinforcements forever arriving. The north end first, then circling around the ruins to cut off those inbound from the south. Then I had to capture Spoogmay Keep. This would protect the film canister from being located and destroyed. With both time limits on the mission stopped, I could go and rescue the prisoner being held at the guard post on the way to the communications outpost. Then I could come back to Spoogmay Keep and grab the film canister, then extract a nearby Griffin Vulture to complete the mission.
Amazing. Mission complete. That right there is why you're the best, boss. The one and only.
Episode 41, Proxy War Without End. The final regular mission, and the objectives are as straightforward as you could hope for. All 4 land vehicles of the armoured column have to be extracted, as well as the commander who arrives at Nova Braga Airport on the gunship, and the diamonds he's hidden, as well as the blueprint the chopper's carrying. This means the mission script has to play out, but this time I'm able to interfere and extract all 4 land vehicles without making the rest of the mission impossible. This gives me time to jump ahead to Nova Braga and make preparations. Repeating the war economy tactic, I placed C4 where the chopper would land to drop off the commander. This meant I knew exactly where the blueprint would be. Retreating out the airport and circling north to the west side, all I needed to do now was hide in the room where the diamonds were hidden and wait for the commander to show up. It's nice and isolated, so there's no risk of getting detected. All that was left was to circle back around, below the chopper, and sneak in under the confusion to grab the blueprints.
Amazing. Mission complete. That right there is why you're the best, boss. The one and only.
Episode 45, A Quiet Exit. This was the final mission, and the ultimate test. Because up until now, I had been under the impression that every enemy killed would be a points deduction. Quiet will automatically open fire on most waves, but luckily enemies will generally ignore her if you immediately tell her to stand down once she starts shooting, then draw attention to yourself. The initial plan was to distract enemies in one direction, then sneak around to trank all the enemies with the Mark 22. Enemies won't react if you hit them with a trank dart, but they will if you miss and the shot lands near them. This was possible, but it took almost half an hour, and trying to snipe with a bullet drop often let me down, resulting in the enemies getting team killed by their own tanks and APCs, which even though I wasn't the one killing them, it ruined the no kill bonus along with the perfect stealth bonus which would have scored the S rank. But when I realised that killing enemies only removes the no kills bonus, this suddenly became a very different story.
I haven't forgotten what you've told me, boss. We have no tomorrow, but there's still hope for the future. In our struggle to survive the present, we push the future farther away. Will I see it in my lifetime? Probably not. Which means there's no time to waste. Someday the world will no longer need us. No need for the gun, or the hand to pull the trigger. I have to drive out this demon inside me. Build a better future. That's what we will leave as our legacy. Another mission, right, boss?